Yeah, I mean, first off, maybe just kind of give us a little background about yourself. I know you're from Ottawa, and maybe a little bit about your journey getting into broadcasting.
For sure. So yes, I'm born and raised in Ottawa to Jamaican parents. I grew up in a single parent household with my mom, so it's just been my mom and I my entire life. Low income neighborhood, grew up in the Carlington neighborhood, if anyone's familiar with that area. And I think in terms of jumping into broadcasting, I didn't know that that was going to be the case when I was towards the end of my senior years at high school. I really thought I was going to pursue entertainment. I studied theater at Canterbury High School for the Arts. I'd gotten accepted into the American Musical and Dramatic Academy off Broadway in New York, two-year conservatory program. I really thought that I was, going to be this Broadway star, if you will, or, the next Will Smith. That was my dream. But once I really started to consider it and the fact that, after my 2 years of studies, there's a chance that if you're not working right away, you may be asked to leave the country. And then also the tuition was sky high. They only offered me a partial scholarship as an international student. And when you look at this conservatory certificate, that only really matters to that very niche community, that theater world and the acting world. It didn't really seem realistic because beyond those dreams, I really had goals of elevating the status of my family. And you run the risk of busting tables waiting for your big break and not knowing when that's going to happen. So a high school teacher actually, who was a former journalist himself, said, Steph, your writing is really strong. You may want to consider that. And so then I turned and, got really introspective and thought about what it is that I wanted to do as a child. And I knew that I grew up watching CTV Ottawa. It's funny that I work for them now. And Max Keeping and Lee Chappell, and I grew up watching those guys, and I always thought it would be cool to be a news anchor. So then I pursued journalism, stayed in Ottawa, and got my honors degree from Carleton U. So that's kind of how I fell into that. And I launched my career third-year undergrad, so I got my foot in the door at age 20, and then just decided I was going to climb that corporate ladder from there.
That's amazing. That's quite the journey. And then, so did you originally start kind of in Ottawa? Because I know you went to Calgary after. How did that kind of happen?
I did start in Ottawa. So my my first newsroom job was an editorial assistant, which is a pretty nice title for the guy that writes the ticker tape that scrolls across the bottom of the screen. So that was my first.
Someone's got to do it, right?
Someone has to do it. Someone has to do those jobs. And so I was pursuing that. I worked Monday to Friday, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. So I was in the newsroom part-time. And my headlines would scroll across the bottom of Canada AM. And I started working under Michael O'Byrne at the time because we were doing local inserts during heading into commercials. Then I started doing a little bit of web reporting and then some script writing for the anchors. And then within the year, I was doing some television reporting. So yeah, it started here in Ottawa under CJOH on Merivale Road, pre-fire. If anyone has been in Ottawa long enough to remember that our station burnt down before we moved into the market. So I was there since 2008. There for about 7 years. By that time, I had kind of fulfilled every editorial position in the newsroom, backfilled the assignment editors, backfilled the producers. I was on-air reporting, web reporting, doing everything I could to kind of just learn the ropes and navigate the newsroom. And then I had this opportunity. I was getting really frustrated a little bit, to be honest, because management would claim that I'm the victim of my own success because I was doing such a good job behind the scenes with some of these other positions that they didn't. I felt like I wasn't being given the opportunity to pursue my career objectives, which was on-air reporting. So that's essentially why I left, and I went to the competition in Calgary. And I worked for Global out there and anchored a morning show, which was fun. So I did that for about 2 years before CTV Ottawa wanted to poach me back. Now I'm back home.
That's so cool. And was an adjustment doing like the morning show versus like nighttime reporting?
Oh yeah, it's a huge adjustment for sure. I mean, people wake up to get ready for their day, but we've already been up for several hours. I think my alarm clock used to go off around 3 a.m.
Wow.
I was being on air from like 6 to 10. And,
Yeah.
it's so funny because I just did not sleep very much at all
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'd watched a Barbara Walters interview. She had done a morning show early in her career as well. And she said that she had chosen not to let the hours of work stop her from living life. And so I just like taken on this mantra, which also meant I just didn't sleep. I was like, yeah, I'll be at that dinner. No worries.
That's pretty wild. Well, it's good. It's good you're back here, and it seems like a more regular schedule, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me about maybe what's one of the most interesting stories you've ever reported.
That's a tough one. I mean,
Yeah.
I think all the stories that we report are fairly interesting. If they weren't, hopefully we wouldn't be reporting them at all. But yeah, no, that would be a tough one. There are certain ones that definitely stick out for different reasons, though. I would say my first major fatal crash really sticks with me, partially because I was so young in my career. I think, like maybe 21, and the teenagers that had passed away in this crash were in their senior year, so they were 17, were like very close in age. It was really traumatizing. It was in Navin. I'll never forget this. It was in Navin, and it was this rollover crash, and 3 friends lost their lives all at once. And I think that first tragedy that you have to cover and come to terms and really find it within yourself to apply all of this journalistic training to remove yourself from the situation, to fulfill your objectives of getting information and giving a family an opportunity to share their story, right? The worst thing that you can feel as a journalist to another human is as though you're inconveniencing them or being insensitive towards them. But it's still your job to call this grieving family and give them an opportunity to be a part of the story. And usually you'll get hung up on, but there are people that do willingly want to participate for various reasons. Either they find it therapeutic, or, which I feel why I have to call them, is to give them an opportunity to have that voice and be the best person to speak on their loved one's behalf who's no longer with us.
Mm-hmm.
So there are stories like that really stick with you.
Absolutely. Sounds like a really challenging job, like, to be able to deal with these really difficult situations and be able to go in there and just try to you're doing your job. But I think it's interesting that you said kind of giving them an opportunity to speak too, right?
Yeah, that's a primary objective. It can be really uncomfortable, but I feel as though people recognize other people's energy. And so if you go about it the wrong way or for the wrong reasons, there's often this defense that comes up. And unfortunately, journalists and the media have a bad reputation of only wanting to meet their deadline, of only wanting to have a good story. And my approach is people first. So, the first question shouldn't be, are you willing to talk to me? It should be, are you okay? And I'm so sorry for your loss. And this is the reason why I'm calling, because I can't prevent this from being on the news tonight. It's going to be on the news. But I'm giving you an opportunity to take full control and help to narrate the story, if you will, and speak on your loved one's behalf. Also because I know that our viewers and the public can be cruel. They make assumptions, right? Like that crash I was speaking of, they were so young. You get talks of, were they irresponsible? Were they drinking? Were they blah, 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 blah? And then they never take that opportunity to consider who they were to their families and their friends. And they don't know what the true answer is while an investigation is ongoing. So at least if a mother or brother or father or best friend is willing to honor their memory and shed some light on who they are, we can maybe get a little bit more of a compassionate response from the public.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, how long have you been doing this now? Over 10 years? 12 years?
Yeah, I'm getting old, bro.
Do you feel it's getting
a little over 12 years.
Do you feel it's getting do you find it's getting easier? Is it getting harder? Just in general, how do you find?
journalism's changing.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
For sure. It's transitioned so much, even within what I like to think is a relatively short period of time from when I started my career. When I started my career, we were still recording interviews on tape.
Yeah.
Right? In 2008, it was still on tape. CTV Ottawa barely had a website. I was there for the launch of the website that you currently know. And 2008 doesn't seem that long ago. What else has changed? A lot has changed. The resources have changed. The roles have changed. Now, a lot of our reporters are a one-person team. When I started my career, all of these roles were separate. So as a reporter, you'd go out with a camera operator. Once you got back with your tape, you'd give it to an editor. Now our reporters are the camera operators and the editors, and they're not working on double screen PCs, if you will. They're editing on tablets from their cruisers. So the technology has made certain things more efficient to deliver and faster to deliver news. However, there will always be an argument around quality and compromising the integrity of what you're putting out there based on how quickly you're trying to do it, the vetting process, the fact checking, the second set of eyes, balancing ideas off of more than one person, and alleviating yourself potential bias if you're working with a camera operator or working with an editor that can suggest certain things to you editorially, even though they're more on the technical side. So there's a bit of that at play, which I think we're working around, and it's been really tough to compete with the internet. And I think that a lot of people at the top of the food chain, or the ladder, if you will, are not using certain platforms themselves, but they are in control of making decisions based on that. So even things like social media, it's kind of like you get these consultants being like, you have to be operating in these spheres and these environments and on these platforms, but because they're not users, they sometimes aren't making the best decisions because they're relying on theory as opposed to practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely you're almost forced to be more dynamic, to have to do a lot of that yourself, right? Like I remember when I was a kid, I'd walk around the neighborhood and I'd see like a big van pull up, you got the cameraman with this big thing, the reporter with their own microphone. Yeah, now it's just your phone in your pocket solo, right? Like,
pretty much. And even live hits, right? When you're live, there's no more like, if you watch movies right now, they're still going with a microwave satellite truck. No, it's not. You're pretty much walking with a modem on your back and a knapsack and like plugging in. And when we do live hits, it's pretty much like doing a FaceTime call.
That's pretty wild. So what's the hardest part about being in the public eye? Like, do you find that to be challenging, or do you like it?
I don't like it, believe it or not. I like what I do. And I think there's a little bit of activism in terms of me wanting to be in front of the camera for diversity and visibility reasons, and that's a whole separate conversation. But I think when you have a public profile, people act as though you owe them something. Like there's a sense of entitlement to know about you and to know about your life, and sometimes very personal things, or because they see it as being in such a glamorous position, which I guarantee you television news isn't very glamorous at all, or I should say anymore, that you have it all together and they don't need to treat you as though you have feelings, right? Like, we get trolled quite a bit, and sometimes it's not around the integrity of our work as opposed to being on this shallow medium called television, and people want to pick on what you look like. If your tie is crooked, or if for some of my female colleagues, if a hair is out of place, or if their shirt or blouse seems too tight, or if the dress is cut too low, and everyone's just trying their best to deliver news, and sometimes people aren't even talking about the words that are coming out of our mouths as opposed to what we look like, and that's disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I can't relate, but I imagine like it's really just have to focus on that end goal of just like, right, helping people, communicating their stories, and trying to ignore all that other stuff, all that
Yeah.
noise.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know you're pretty active kind of in the community. I know United Way Community Builder, as well as some other not-for-profits organizations. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I feel like the city of Ottawa in particular, but my community has given me so much and has helped to raise me, and is truly the reason why I can do what I do today. And I give them full credit for also helping to create the individual and my belief system that I have and what I value in society. That I think it's just a way for me selfishly to kind of pay it forward or to pay it back, because I feel indebted to my community. So I try to do whatever I can, because I've been on the receiving end on some of these Good Samaritans in the past. Like even an opportunity to attend Canterbury High School kind of stemmed from when you and I were in junior high, and Mrs. Burton nominated me for an award through MASK, an organization I'm currently listed on the board of directors for, and that opened the door to take private lessons in theater. So I was studying musical theater and Shakespeare at age 13, something that my family certainly wouldn't have been able to afford to do, to send me to the Ottawa School of Speech and Drama and study under some really talented people and get adjudicated from the theater directors who flew from England to come and watch our monologues and all of that. So I've really been able to benefit from some of these organizations that have been operating in our city for 3 decades plus. And I feel as though that's only fair to keep the momentum going in terms of community service and volunteerism, to show my gratitude and appreciation for it all.
I think that's really important. You mentioned the Miss Burton. I remember her being extremely passionate about drama. I think Guys and Dolls was probably yelling a lot. Guys and Dolls was the play at the time, and I know she would go over and above to do anything, and it it shows, it translates, and it helps people too, right? So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And you mentioned gratitude too, which we're huge on. We're really pushing that. Like we'll try to, almost in every meeting we'll have, like, what are you grateful for right now, right? And just trying to push that like positive culture, and being grateful for even the small things, but the big things too, right? And it's important that we don't forget those things.
For sure. I mean, I think the biggest currency that I have is my time, right? I don't have deep pockets. I don't come from money. I can't just shove $1 million towards United Way or $10,000 to CHIO. That's not the type of philanthropy that I can do, but I have time. So you can leverage my profile if you think it'll help, sell tickets for your fundraiser. I'm happy to host the gala. I'm happy to sit on your board of directors and give you my experience in terms of being a diverse voice around the table. Anything that I can do to help and help make our society, community, world a better place. Why wouldn't I want to engage in that? Yeah.
I think that's amazing, and that's what I like about Ottawa too. Is like there's tons of groups out there and just really good people willing to help others, right? Some of that, it's still kind of small enough. You don't have that Toronto huge city vibe. It's
right.
Nice. Everyone knows everyone kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what's something that most people don't know about you?
I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty open book, but I feel like people are always surprised to hear that I sing or that I'm so heavily engaged in the arts. Probably the singing. I think people realize like I act a little bit, and they've seen me in a few major productions here and there, little cameos, and so I think people realize that. But then when I go to sing at an event, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you could sing." And I was like, to me, it's my normal, because I've been singing since I was 12.
Yeah.
I perform all the time.
What do you do? Do you do anything locally for performing at all?
Not so much now. Ever since I had to really go full throttle with adulting, I have not been able to do as much performing as I'd like. I've done a few musicals here. I did Rent at Centerpoint, the full Monty. I performed at the NAC. I've backed up a Grammy Award-winning gospel artist at Blues Fest, so that was
Wow.
cool. Sometimes I sing at a gala when I'm asked to, when we used to do the Amazing People Gala for CTV. This year, the Chio Telethon, I pre-recorded a song for them, sang on the telethon. I mostly did a lot of gospel in my teens, and I was in a Motown band in high school, so we like to perform a lot, and that's my favorite genre.
I love it. That's cool. And so we have a lot of like younger team members, kind of, you know, early 20s, just getting started in their career.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of us are a little older, but if you could give your younger self any advice, what would it be?
To have fun. I think I was late in the game of understanding work-life balance or study-life balance. But I think when you grow up the way I grew up and the circumstances that I did, you only have one objective. And so your head's always in the book. You're always trying to get that scholarship. You're always trying to elevate yourself. And like, I launched my career at age 20. Most people were waiting until they had a degree in their head. But I wasn't really good at making time for myself or having fun along the way. And I think it's really about enjoying the journey, right? You're so focused on the destination, gotta get there, gotta get there, gotta get there. You fail to maybe pull over by the side of the road and smell the roses along the way, if you will. And I think that's an important part of the process, to enjoy the journey and understand that things don't always happen on your timeline. You may be setting plans and goals for yourself, but persevering through, because there were lots of times where I felt like giving up, or maybe I shouldn't go the journalism route, and maybe I'll never be a news anchor, and certain things are happening for people that came after me, before me, and I didn't really understand all of that. But if you persevere and just keep at it, try and let go of some of that negativity and really truly just enjoy the journey until you get there.
Absolutely. Because sometimes you don't know where it's going to go. Sometimes things just, you know, take a life of their own too, right?
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to be back in Ottawa. I knew I wanted to be back east because I was closer to family. As you know, my mom entered retirement, my aunt got older, and all that stuff. But I thought I was going to land in Toronto. And then lo and behold, I also didn't know I would be in Calgary for less than 2 years. Pack that, move across the country. But, you know, when a door opens, you have to walk through it, because you don't know if another one is going to open on your timeline. So it's just kind of like, well, here we go.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And I mean, I'm sure you got a lot going on and whatnot. How do you replenish your energy?
Still figuring that one out.
Aren't we all?
I travel a lot. Unfortunately, in the context of a pandemic, none of that is happening. So I've been struggling a little bit. But usually I try to be on a plane or get out of the city every 3 to 4 months. I'm fairly big on jet setting. And plus, I have a lot of family in Jamaica too still. So I like to go back and visit. I haven't traveled since pre-lockdown in January. So now I'm trying to renew, or find new ways, I should say, rejuvenation. Quick getaways to cottages have helped. Doesn't quite feel far enough, but it's good.
Yeah, I guess we don't know how long it'll be before we're able to actually travel again, right? Like,
right. Yeah, and then it's like, even if you do, it's like, do you want to use 2 weeks for quarantine? Right? You go and come back, and then you gotta isolate for 14 days. That's no fun.
Oh, no doubt. Although it would be a break.
It would be a break. It would be a break.
And are you a big, like, do you read at all? Are you reading any books at the moment? Anything you want to share with the team?
I read quite a bit. I just finished reading a book of poetry by someone we actually went to school with. Jackie Bird has a
a good friend of mine.
Yeah. So I ordered hers, and I finished that. it's really been really interesting to read that, because then you go back to our 12 and 13-year-old selves and you're like, I wonder if any of that had any impact on some of the eloquence that's being offered right now through prose. I'm also about to crack open the Wizard series. And so another Carleton J School grad, his name's Wesley King, he partnered with Kobe Bryant on writing his series. And that's kind of a Harry Potter type fantastical look, but through the lens of sports and athleticism. So I'm about to crack that open. And yeah, it's really cool that, the co-author, it's penned by someone I went to school with and a Canadian working with Kobe Bryant. So definitely going to take a look at that. It's meant more for children, but, I'm still young at heart.
That's fine. Those are honestly, I usually ask people the question about the books. Those are probably some of the most unique ones I've actually heard. No doubt. So yeah, I mean, I saw that you recently, I think, won an Ontario 150 award.
Yeah, so that would have been 2017.
Okay, 2017. Okay.
Yeah. So Canada's 150th birthday, that's when the province was handing that out. That came through under our former Attorney General, Yasser Naqvi.
Okay.
And it was a surprise award because I was there to host the event, and then they surprised me by giving me one, which kind of threw me for a loop, but it was much appreciated.
That's pretty special. So it basically was to, I wrote down because I wouldn't remember it, but basically to honor persons who have made substantial contributions to their community, province, and country, and acknowledge that others are truly grateful for their hard work, dedication, energy, and passion. I thought that was pretty special, so I had to mention it.
Yeah, I don't even feel like I measure up to that description of the award, but it's very flattering for sure.
That's awesome. Excellent. So usually at this point, what I'll do, I'll kind of open up the floor to questions. Okay. So a lot of the teams on the call right now. So I see there's actually already some questions in the chat. So maybe I'll kind of read them out and I'll let you answer.
For sure.
So here we have Alex. Working in journalism, I'm sure you've had your fair share of interactions with publicists/PR practitioners. What's your biggest pet peeve when contacted by one with a story pitch?
My biggest pet peeve is the obvious copy and paste pretending to be a customized, personalized email. That's my biggest pet peeve, because they're all coming through at the same time. In a newsroom, most of us are sitting, we're physically distancing now, but in the past, we'd be sitting right beside each other in an open concept newsroom, and it all pops in at once, and it'll be like, "Dear Stefan," but everything else is the same. "Dear Katie," everything else is the same. And it's like, it doesn't feel very personal at all. Just do a generic one to the newsroom and see what happens at that point.
Yeah. Have you seen those ones now? People will take like a picture of like a laptop and they'll screenshot the website in, or they'll do like speak writing. And it's like, come on. That's so obvious. We have one from Amanda. Any advice for public speaking, whether that's doing a presentation or speaking confidently in a meeting?
My advice for public speaking is to not be on book. That's the same advice I would have gotten from my theater training. You don't go into an audition not knowing your material. So I often, when I present or speak in schools, there are very rare times where I would prepare cue cards or formal speech. The best advice I would give is to create bullet points in your head, know those, and then just wing it, and just know how you want to start and how you want to conclude. But you'll find your way there once you have those notes, those Coles notes in your head of the messages or points that you want to make, or the messages that you want to deliver. I find, because part of that too is about connecting with your audience and connecting with the people that you're speaking to. If your head's always down, looking at a paper, human interaction really takes place when you can make eye connection. And even though you may be on a stage with maybe hundreds of people in the room or in the auditorium, as soon as you're looking out at them, they feel as though they can make a connection with you. And that's important to do if you want to maintain their attention and have them continuously engage with you from beginning to end. It's okay to have like cheat sheets and notes here and there, and especially if I'm called upon to fulfill a certain amount of time, like a 30-minute speech, I will prepare a speech. But other than that, I would honestly just say you can go in with more confidence the better you know what you want to say and how you want to say it.
So that's really great advice. I know for me, when I just started like doing presentations, and it was on like technical stuff like SEO or web design or whatever, and it was probably forced early on, but eventually once you like you mentioned, like connecting with the audience, and when you can connect it with a story or something, like that's what they remember, and that's how you really have impact, right? So I think that's really cool advice. Austin, you mentioned you were in a couple of major productions. Could you talk more about these productions, what they were, and how was that experience? So I guess with acting.
Yeah, so I started acting, I've had my agent, so I started acting professionally when I was 15, so I got an agent in high school. And most recently is when I've been on some more major productions that have been recognized. I've done a couple made-for-TV movies, Guilty at 17, played a reporter in that one. Designated Survivor starring Kiefer Sutherland.
Nice.
Played a reporter in that one as well, so not a huge stretch on my acting chops, really. But I was in the briefing room a couple times asking questions in season 2. Did a Christmas movie. Was not a reporter in that one. And that came out last Christmas. Last Christmas or the Christmas before? No, the Christmas before, I think. That one was fun because it was directed by Megan Follows, who she was the original Anne of Green Gables. And when I went into that audition, when I got my callback audition, I went into the room and did my thing, blah, blah, blah. I left there, I was like, she looks so familiar. The casting director calls me and offers me the part. She's like, well, Anne of Green Gables. I was like, oh, right, that's why. But she was a joy to work with. So there's like incredible talent right there. And it's lovely to see that she's still in the game, not only acting, but also directing as well. I just had a cameo in the Mel Gibson Christmas movie that was recently filmed here. That one, the working title was Fat Man. Sometimes when we get to exhibition and release, they change the title, but be on the lookout for that. And I'm waiting to hear back from a couple others. The Bold Type, that's a TV show that's more popular south of the border. It's kind of like a teen version of Sex and the City. That's what I like to liken it by, but that's filmed in Montreal. And then a couple others, mini-series. The Real Detectives, I played a forensic tech in that for one of the flashbacks in terms of reenactments on a crime scene.
So does your agent just find you these gigs and you kind of say, oh yeah, I want to do that, or I don't, or how does it work? Do you go to them?
Well, it's bad to ever turn down an audition. There are definitely roles that I'm not as excited about. You never want to turn down an audition because what you're doing is you're giving yourself an opportunity. Every time you step in the room, you're giving yourself an opportunity to showcase your talent to that casting director. And you don't really tell casting directors no because maybe they won't ask to see you that next time, right? Yeah. So you always want to just seek every opportunity, and whatever pans out, pans out. You never really know what's going to be your breakout role anyways, or what's going to land you that next bigger gig. So if you say no, it's only because I have a full-time career and I can't always make it work, but it's not for me being picky. Because as an actor, you really can't afford to be picky. Certainly not in the beginning. Like, I'm not Denzel over here.
Well, that's it. I think it's a good lesson in life in general. Like, any opportunity you can take it, right? Because you never know.
You don't know what it's going to lead to. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know. A lot of the time, you don't know the full cast when you're asked for auditions because there are NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. You don't see a full script. You don't know too much. And there are some productions where I've landed a gig and have been floored by the talent involved in it. And it wasn't a role that was exciting for me, but it was exciting to be part of that production.
Absolutely. Amanda, you mentioned the influence of your drama teacher had a big impact on your journey. Can you talk a bit about mentoring or being mentored and any advice you have for people on either side of the mentor-mentee relationship?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what dealing with our former drama teacher taught me is that there's a lot of things that you can't take personally. And I think right now with mentorship, there's a lot of sensitivity and hypersensitivity that didn't used to exist in the past. Whereas, for example, constructive criticism is taken personally, and it's not personal, it's professional. It's not about you as an individual not being able to accomplish something, or you disagreeing with your mentor because you've poured all this hard work into it. It's truly about them making you better. And when it came to Mrs. Burt, I think educators are a huge influence. Like, I give educators, teachers, all the props in the world because I know how they've encouraged me in the past and sought opportunities for me to elevate myself or get knowledge and education beyond the immediate classroom setting. They're like a second set of parents. And I think that when you engage with a mentor, you have to view it in that light, that this person is going to be a parent figure for me. And so sometimes I'm going to get in trouble. Sometimes I'm going to get grounded. Sometimes they're going to say things that I'm not going to like. But if I trust them as my mentor, I need to accept that as coming from a place of love and a place that is going to benefit me down the road. And I have that sometimes with even some of the junior reporters in the newsroom, where I can be very blunt and direct, probably because I come from a Jamaican family and that's just how we operate.
Yeah.
But I've acknowledged that there are a lot of people that would rather you be passive aggressive or exercise a heightened level of soft skills. But the way I communicate, there's no mistaking what I mean. And so there's no room to play around with interpretation, which is why I communicate the way I do. So it might sting at first, like Buckley's, but it's going to make you better in the long run. So just take your medicine.
Absolutely. Great advice. Marley, do you still get nervous when speaking? If so, how do you overcome it?
It depends on what I'm speaking about. So I don't get nervous to perform because I feel as though once you take on a character, you're no longer yourself. I get nervous about speaking about myself because that's a different level of vulnerability. I don't actually like speaking about myself. And people are like, oh, you're on TV every day and you tell stories, but I tell other people's stories, right? The point of journalism is to remove yourself altogether if you want to avoid bias and try and maintain this ideal of objectivity, is to remove yourself. So even though I'm there telling the story, I don't feel as vulnerable as if the story were to be about me. So those are the only times I get nervous, when people message me or they call me and be like, hey, do you want to come do this interview about yourself? And I'm like, oh, do I?
Like right now.
Like right now.
We're not so bad though. Jess, who was your biggest role model or influencer growing up and why? And what was it about them that inspired you?
So it's going to be corny because my biggest role model influence was my mother. And I get the sense that once she had me, she stopped living for herself, and every action that came after was about me. And when someone sacrifices so much of themselves out of love, it's hard not to gravitate towards that and idolize that individual, right? Being a single mom, raising me by herself, sometimes running around between 3 different jobs and not getting a day off for months upon months on end. She doesn't drive, so it's like, we know what winter's like in the bus system, and getting stuck at a bus stop in the middle of the dark early in the morning because the sun hasn't risen yet. She has to be at work for 7 o'clock in the morning, and just all of everything that she poured into me, her son, to make my life better and to make me a good person and an individual that she could be proud of, was certainly my biggest influence. My biggest fear would be not being successful or not making her proud. So that has been my biggest motivation in life, to make my family proud. And I think she taught me early on too, as I watched a lot of television and would be like, hey, Will Smith and Michael Jordan and blah, 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 and watching much music and all these things. And she'd be like, okay, now it's time to go read a book. These people have made it. You can't be idolizing them because they're good. They have money in the bank. They've gone through everything that they need to do to make their lives better. Now you need to go do something in order to make your life better down the road. So go finish your homework or go read a book or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's great. Jess says, amazing, thank you. That is very special.
Thank you, Jessica.
Frank, shout outs to Fisher Park and Jackie.
Yes.
Mrs. Burton was my homeroom teacher. Love the Instagram workout videos. Like, follows you on Instagram. Two-part question. You work a lot with tragic news and negative events. How do you stay level-headed and positive? How do you deal with so much negativity that's in the news?
So it's been hard this year. As I mentioned earlier, I think traveling has been my biggest method to cope, because it gives me a chance to remove myself from the city and my responsibilities here and unplug completely. So then I don't have the pressure of being in the public eye with my immediate audience and being recognized and feeling as though I can't have a good time in certain scenarios. If you're out like nightlife style. And so this year has been particularly tough because I haven't been able to leave. I haven't been able to unplug. And if anything, I'm more engaged now than ever before in my career. And, the pandemic did something really interesting where everyone was touched by it. So in March and April, at the height of it all, some of my colleagues were unable to come to work because they had compromised immune systems, or they lived with someone with a compromised immune system. They had either survived cancer themselves or they had a spouse that survived cancer. So at the height of it, just as a precaution, they weren't coming in. We had people that had just returned from travel, and so they were in isolation for 2 weeks. So we were extremely short-staffed. Mm-hmm. Stakes were extremely high, but no one was around.
Wow.
And so my 40-hour work week turned into a 60 to 80-hour work week for several weeks. And I was doing everything myself. I was producing and writing my own newscast, then performing on air, having to be on. And this was a pandemic where the information it felt like it was changing by the second, not the minute, not the hour. It truly felt as though it was changing by the second. And so just the mental fatigue attached to trying to keep up with all of that, and you don't have your usual people or editorial assistants around to help you out because no one's around. We had an anchor whose husband, Patricia Bull, her husband travels with the Sens because he's a hockey commentator and analyst, and they were in California, and he caught COVID. So then she had to be in isolation because she lives with him. So that's just like a concrete example of how it has impacted us. Meanwhile, I have cousins in New York City that had contracted the virus. And so you're dealing with this professionally, and then you're worried about your loved ones personally, and then George Floyd smacks you in the face. And then you can't get around that conversation. And there's been no break. And I think when that took place, as we were trying to grasp an understanding and comprehend what certain people or communities that identify as being Black deal with, I got called on a lot. So I didn't get a chance to even break away from that. And I was happy to do it. However, I still think we call upon the people we know and that we're comfortable with. And I think there are a lot of other academics that definitely would have done the conversation justice as well. But it was a conversation that needed to take place. And so you have this responsibility, this constant responsibility to engage in these conversations. But lockdown has prevented me from an escape or my usual coping mechanisms. Remember, gyms just reopened. Someone mentioned my workout videos. That's another thing that I used to cope. It's like I wasn't even doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think, there's a lot of pieces to that. And is it, just going back to, you mentioned earlier on when, COVID struck and all that kind of stuff, everyone's more remote. Is everyone still kind of remote there? Are people kind of going into the office? Like, how is that working right now?
So right now, the only folks in the building are really the anchors and a few technical staff. Mm-hmm. Our sales department, which is usually upstairs, they're still working from home. A lot of our reporters are still essentially banned from the building. They need special permission from our VP to enter the building with a good reason as to why. Mostly because a lot of our reporters are still engaging with the public for storytelling purposes, and we're also trying to limit the amount of traffic in and out of the building. So because there's such a self-contained unit, and it's a fairly new workflow for us. We only started doing this one-man band thing in January. Like, they just got their training in January to learn how to operate new cameras, edit on the tablet, and all of that stuff. So they're still working remotely and not entering the building. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. It's a ghost town. And, we make sure that we're separated and sit far apart from each other.
Do you find it's more challenging, like not having, for myself, not having that kind of human interaction on a daily basis with your team members and whatnot, makes it more challenging? Like, we're having a few people come in now, but it's not what it was.
Yeah, no, the newsroom didn't used to be a lonely space. Now it's a lonely space. It used to be this beehive. And when there's breaking news, people are up on their feet and people are rushing around and we're getting things done. Now it's like phone call, no answer, text message, email, and you don't have. I value human interaction, and all of my friends know I'm a hugger. So, like, even just interacting with people that way, and it's like, hey, hi, are we going to hug? Are we going to are you okay? Do I need to step back a little bit more? I feel like, and even in theater, when you block a scene on stage, amateurs will always get up in your face when they're trying to express anger. But truthfully, how humans interact is that they create distance from one another when they're upset with one another. And so the fact that we're doing that for a health reason, because we're in this medical emergency, if you will, it's creating a lot of tension between people and between colleagues. And I don't know if we properly know how to navigate all of that. And I think that is why they say next pandemic to come our way will be a mental health pandemic.
Yeah, like, because at the end of the day, half the communication is body language, right? So you're saying like with instinctive body language, things that it can be perceived as otherwise, and even just like remotely, the lack of body communication right out of the gate, you're down 50%. So even if you're the best communicator, you're still, getting through.
No one knows that I'm smiling at them at the grocery store with my mask on. Like, what am I supposed to do now? Elevate my eyebrow?
Really animated. Frank said, thanks for the inspirational and motivational words.
Oh, no problem, brother.
Austin has another question. So you mentioned that you travel a lot. I know you mentioned Jamaica. Was there another favorite trip you've taken?
Oh, yeah, Brazil. Rio Carnival 2014. That's one of my favorites. I don't know what Rio's like when it's not Carnival, but man, I can't even explain the level of production involved with that with that event. It's just this 10-day event, beautiful weather, mile-long beach, and if you go to Carnival through the stadium, because they have a street parade, but then they have like the Samba Schools competition.
Mm-hmm.
I did not understand the magnitude of money spent into that production, and it truly is a production. There are these monstrous floats. I've never seen anything like it. Colors galore, dancing, music until sunrise. And it was one of the best cultural experiences that I've ever had. I really like going to the UK. I think London is great. I feel I really fit in there. And Barcelona is cool too. I've been to Madrid. I've been to Colombia. I did 3 cities there. Don't go to Bogota in April because it's like their winter is really cold, and I expressed a lot of ignorance and did not pack accordingly. I was like, I'm going to South America. It's hot. It wasn't hot. It was rainy and cold. And then, yeah, I've been all over the United States as well. LA is also one of my favorite places to go. I think I like just hot weather and beaches.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can, hopefully sooner and later you'll be able to get away and get some R&R, you know?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, I don't see any more questions from the team, so I don't know if you have anything else you wanna add or anything like that.
I don't think so. I mean, I just want to, again, thank you guys for taking an interest in hearing from me. I don't know if I said anything profound, but hopefully it was worth your while and you know, valuable use of your time. And I enjoyed spending time with you guys.
Absolutely. You as well. Again, really appreciate you taking the time. Great chat. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk soon.
For sure.
All right. Take care.
All right. Later, bro.